Welcome back from that short commercial break, and this is Financial Markets. With me, Julius Nsubuga, and we are bringing you what is happening in the world of finance, banking, the stock market, and the Forex later on at midday with my colleague Marcelino. And of course, we will continue to give you the latest updates on these financial markets. And well, right now, as we basically look at the stock market and what is happening right now, globally, it is very much interesting to know that in Asia, you have a bit of losers who are basically in Singapore. Singapore, the stock market is down, and also in Hong Kong. So basically, you can see that they are basically performing. They're basically down, losing. They are losing by very, very great percentages. So it is very important to note that while we are basically presenting this information, it's always changing at any one point in time. And so this is presented as is in real time. That's the stock market and how it is performing. So it is always basically changing at all time. That is important to note. So let's have a look at some of the rates over here. And I think it is a very important, it's a very important thing to note right here in rates. Let's go on rates and have a look at basically how these are performing. So if you look at rates, many of these are basically bonds. And bonds are basically, these are funds where you and I can basically buy into government. You can lend your money to government, and government can use that for its economic development plans, and then probably pay you later over probably a longer period of time than treasury bills, which are shorter term, say 1 year, 2 years. But a government bond probably can be about 10 years. And probably if we look at the US dollar, I beg your pardon, if we look at the US bond, 10-year bond, well, you can see that you will actually, right now as we speak, it is at basically 1.91 dollars, and that is quite something to note. So it is down by about 0.056. It's basically also a bit down and losing, but the value basically is about 1.9, we must say, dollars. And then in German, probably you also have the bond down by about 0.058, bring it to about 0.17 in German currency. The Italy 10-year bond is basically down by about also 0.03, and then probably you can have that value at about 1.81 right now as we speak. But these figures are changing all the time. Well, the Spain 10-year bond is at is down by 0.040 points and representing about 1.170. That is the value, 1.170 in Spanish currency. The UK 10-year bond is down by about 0.0550, and thus bring it to a value of about 1.4 pounds, which is quite something to note as well, because many of these are basically down. The Japanese yen, the Japan 10-year bond is basically down by about also 0.023 right now, and also representing about, that's a value of about 0.185 Japanese yen. So it's a very important streak here. If you have a look at the government bonds all across the globe, with these as an example, well, we can say none of them is basically gaining. All of them are down. And that's the US, the German bond, and the Italian bond, the Spanish bond, the UK bond, and also the Japanese bond. They are all down. And so it is also important to know that. Well, so the graph here shows basically that well, as of 10 a.m., well, it was basically down at its lowest and probably even now going up and up and up. So basically we may see that probably returning a bit later on, but this is what is happening right now. Probably it may bounce back anytime soon, but these are 10-year bonds, and probably they're not so much volatile, and also they're not as well affected by conditions around us, but they are a bit stable, and most of the time they are basically very stable. So if you basically are to buy a bond right now of the US, in the US, that will be about $1.9. German, 0.171 in German currency. And Italy, of course, 1.8. If you're to buy it right now, it's a bit down. So probably right now would be the best time to buy these kinds of bonds. And bonds always, most of the time you can basically rely on bonds because they are less risky, but also require a longer period of time. Lock-in time is really quite long, that you will actually be in position to invest your money, say lend your money to government of Uganda at about say 15%, and probably if you give 1 million, probably you will have about 150,000 by 10 years. So you have about, your 1 million will have made about 150,000 shillings extra. And probably if you compute that and have probably and even invest more money, probably you can see a much more return on your investment over time. So let's have a look at also how these futures are also performing, just right here, how these futures are also performing. These futures are also very important parts of the market because whereas you have the other kinds of indices very much, very much dependent on market conditions, futures most of the time are not, because futures are commodities and shares that are basically bought and sold at a fixed price at a given period of time. But probably if you agree to buy a shares or probably a commodity, you agree with the buyer at a given point in time to buy a commodity at this time, probably say in the next few hours, probably by 6 p.m. I'm going to buy this amount of gold, I'm going to buy these amounts of shares in these companies. And it is basically at an agreed price, so as to just take off the risk of basically having even more and more conditions affecting that kind of agreement. So they are more stable, we must say. So let's have a look at futures over here. Futures, now we can go to futures after rates. We can go now to futures, and probably my colleague Shakira can help me do that right here on futures. So it is also a very, very good element of the stock market, because it gives really a very, very good picture of probably how individuals and companies are basically buying and selling at fixed prices and probably at a given point in time. So let's have a look at futures. Futures right over here. So as you can see over there, you have the, if you look at futures over here, Yes, you have basically, now when you look at the S&P futures, the S&P futures and the Dow Jones Index futures, well, you can see that they are also, the Dow Jones Index futures are down by about 450 points, representing about 1.34%, bringing it to a value of about 33,532. That's dollars. So you can see that, well, they are losing. The Dow Jones Index shows that futures are basically losing by about 1.34%. Having a look at the S&P futures, well, they are also basically losing by about 75 points as we speak right now, representing about 1.68 to 1.7%. That's the range in which it is basically changing right now. So it's down by about that amount and bring it to a value of about 4,304.50. The Nasdaq futures, as you can see over there as well, the Nasdaq futures are basically also at they're down by 224.25 to 75, and thus giving it a percentage of about a downward trend of about 1.57%, thus bring it to a value of about 13,954.25. So that is the Nasdaq futures. We're having a look at gold all across, gold as a future. Well, we must say that, well, it's performing quite on a more positive side right now as we speak. And we can say that it is gaining by about 15.90 points, up by about, that is up by about 0.84%, giving it about 1,903.40. That's the value in US dollars right now as we speak. So that is the gold. And just recall that futures are basically more of like an agreement, a contract between the buyer and the seller to basically transact certain commodities and shares at fixed prices and at a given period of time. And it's given a time lamp and a fixed price, so as to waive off all the market conditions and all the other things that basically could affect the prices of the stock or the commodity. So as we can see right now, the silver is also up by about 0.363 points, and thus it's being represented by about a 1.51% increase, thus bringing it to a value of about $24.360 as we speak right now. And just recall that these figures are keeping on changing every time and then as we speak. And probably you can see crude oil over there. Crude oil is also at about 95.59, that's the value, and it's up by 4 points, giving it a about 25% gain in the value of crude oil. So which I think is quite something. So looking at all these futures, in terms of stock, they're all down. In terms of stock, they're all down. And commodities are actually up. So which gives us an analysis that, so basically, in my own analogy, I can see that the stock futures are basically performing down, they're losing, as the commodity futures are basically gaining. Gold, silver, and crude oil, as you can see just right over here. And it is also very important to note that as the as Russia and Ukraine issues are basically each day becoming more and more complex and also becoming an issue in the world of business as well. Well, these figures are also going to be, they will continue to be basically impacted. As we have seen that the global stock market, as we have seen in the global stock market, Europe is basically all of them, all indices in Europe are showing that the stock market is basically losing. And while in Asia, we have two of them basically losing, and that is the Shanghai and also in basically Singapore. And also looking at the US, well, all the indices, S&P 500, the Dow Jones, and the New York Stock Exchange Composite Index, and all the rest are showing that the stock market is basically up. And it seems like investors are not really minding about what is happening with Russia and Ukraine. Of course, you can't just be there, not mind, but you have to mind your money at all times. But there are certain factors that really boost investors' confidence, like the US president coming up to basically do something about the war and probably put sanctions on Russia, and thus probably investors. That's why we have seen most of these stocks bouncing back, and also some of them even soaring. So, which is something to basically note. And just recall that these figures are always changing all the time, and you can as well always contact us to basically give you, in case of probably any other information that probably you wish us to be indicating for you every single day right here on Financial Markets. We can include it into our program, so we can basically help you make the best of decisions and also the best of financial decisions. You can always follow us on Twitter, on all social media handles, just Smart24, and you can also follow me on Facebook, Sovoga Julius, and also on Instagram the same, and also on Twitter. So we can basically have this information coming in for you every single time. Today is a Monday. Most of these stocks, by close of week, we shall analyze them on Friday, so as to have a general view of how the stocks have been performing all across the week. But it is important to note as well that these figures are changing all the time, and with the help of Market Watch, we've been able to bring you this information for today. And also about the Forex. Forex is a very important part of business, and well, as Marcelino also comes up at midday to basically give you some bits of highlights, and also what you should know about Forex and how to go about Forex and how to make money. Well, it's a very interesting subject as well that probably you may have to basically note. Yes, so that is what we had right here for you on Financial Markets. But just recall that this is where we give you the best of business broadcasting, and it's always about driving business. See you tomorrow.